Hi, it's Cece, former engineer, turned high school math teacher, turned stay-at-home mom to a preschooler and a baby. This video will be a comparison and overview of some popular math curriculum for preschoolers. First, I want to preface this with the fact that preschool math is not at all necessary, but it's working really well for our family, so we're just going to stick with it. First, we'll talk about topics covered in a preschool math curriculum. Second will be a general overview and flip through and kind of look and feel of the curriculum. If any of that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and stick around and let's get started. So I told you guys I'm an engineer by profession, so no surprises here. I made a spreadsheet to compare these curriculums by topic. So in column A, you'll see the topic. On the right, you'll see the curriculum. So column B is dimensions pre-K, column C is preschool math at home, column D is a mathematical reasoning books for 3-year-olds. I don't have the 4-year-old book, so I couldn't include any information on that in the comparison. Column E, I have as the School of Life column. These are topics that I'm pretty sure my kid is going to learn before first grade, whether or not I use a curriculum. So this is a sanity check column for me to remember to not ever push my kids to do anything math related because they are babies and they're going to learn things just fine. So I went and recorded an explanation of all this stuff, and it was 20 minutes long. So I said, you know what, let me just scroll through it so that people can see, and you can pause if you want to look at anything closer. The X's mean it's contained in the curriculum. If it's blank, it doesn't. And if it's yellow in my School of Life column, that means it's something that I still want to go and cover with my kids. I also want to note that the topics in column A were from a few sources: what your preschooler needs to know, home learning year by year, some Google searches on preschool math objectives, and some prerequisites for first grade math. Some curriculums have prerequisites listed for first grade math. So I compiled all of that into column A. So I'll scroll through quickly so you can kind of see what's covered. I'm going to give you a quick comparison of 3 popular math curriculums that are written for a preschool student. The first one here is Kate Snow's Preschool Math at Home. Very popular curriculum for a pretty good reason. There's dimensions pre-K A and B, and then there's mathematical reasoning. First thing, Preschool Math at Home and dimensions are complete preschool curriculums, whereas mathematical reasoning, this is the beginning one for ages 3. And there's another book called Beginning 2 for age 4, and I don't have that book, and so I won't be speaking to it. So, first things first. Preschool Math at Home is one small book. It's actually smaller than this. I got the PDF from Well Trained Mind Press, so bonus points, this one is available via PDF. So today I was looking through Instagram and I saw that Singapore Math posted an FAQ question bubble kind of thing, and someone asked a question about if Singapore would ever offer ebooks. And this is the response. I'll just scroll through the responses real quick so that you can see what they said. I had some more questions, so I sent them a private message, and they actually responded that they're hoping to release all components of Dimensions Math as ebooks. So I don't know, I think that would be pretty awesome. Back to the rest of the video. I printed this, which is really convenient because I can carry around my 5 and 10 frames with me in the back of the book and actually use them because it's spiral bound. The mathematical reasoning comes as a bound book, but I cut it and bound it because it's easier to lay flat, easier to use with my little one. And dimensions pre-K comes with this. This has the most to it. This comes with a mammoth teacher's guide, and it's the first and second parts. You've probably seen that before. And it comes with 4 books for the children to work in. So there is a lot to dimensions pre-K, B, and A and B. So first things first, as you saw, this one has a lot of workbook pages to it, but I wouldn't call it workbook heavy. You can actually just use the teacher's guide without any of those books, and I think your kid's gonna learn a ton that way. So I'm gonna base this on how each of these books teaches a few topics. The first one will be counting and subitizing. So those are the first mathematical concepts a kid generally learns, how to count and subitize, or count and or subitize. And these 2 curriculums teach subitizing. This one teaches counting. So first, I'll talk about what they cover as far as numbers are concerned. If you combine this with their Beginnings 2 curriculum, it covers numbers 1 through 10. So this book by itself for 3-year-olds only focuses on numbers 1 through 5, and the second book covers numbers 0 through 10. This book and this book both talk about subitizing, but if you are only using the dimensions books, it's kind of hard to pick out in the text that they're asking you to teach your child how to subitize. If you read through the teacher's guide, it's overwhelmingly clear that that's what they're trying to teach you, but you have to have read through it. If you're just skimming it, you could miss it, but if you're just reading these, there's like a very, very small call outs occasionally that might have something like that. But the picture on here in these books, they might say something like, how many blocks are in my tower? Can you count them? How many blocks are there now? And it'll say, understand that a rearrangement of objects does not change the number of objects in the set. But in the teacher's guide, what they want the child to do is to see if they can do these without counting. But they say, can you count them? So let's go to the teacher's guide. This is chapter 4, lesson 13. So in this book, it says, whichever student holds the bag spills beans onto a paper plate, and all the students say without counting how many beans are on the plate. So this is subitizing, and it wants you to repeat with different number of beans up to 5. So this is basically a pictorial representation of the activity that they will have guided you to do, and they want your kid to practice subitizing, which is actually super important for building number sense. But if you're just using the textbook, you won't see that. It actually says, can you count them? And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rather than some kids recognizing that 5 is not 4. It's 4 with some extra things to it. And so that goes for the same for this tower. You're subitizing all of them. You're not having to, it's pretty laborious to go through and say 1, 2, 3, 4, and error prone. Then you can recognize that this is 4 and that this is 5. And skipping ahead to chapter 5, on the bottom of this page, you play a roll the dice game, which you're supposed to get a dice and roll. And it says, recognize the number of objects up to 5 without counting. And so in the teacher's guide, they instruct you to cover up the 6th side of the die because that's out of the scope of this particular project. But if your kid can recognize it, then you don't have to do that. And so that has to do with subitizing there. And that's a pretty fundamental concept in these curriculum, the subitizing portion. In Preschool Math at Home, Kate Snow goes well out of her way to start everything with the great importance of subitizing. So in the introduction, she explains what subitizing is, recognizing quantities and combinations without counting, and she gives you reasons why that's important and kind of goes into detail about that. And then that's literally what your child starts out with pretty immediately in these activities. So these two cover subitizing if you're using a teacher's guide, lightly if you're not, and the mathematical reasoning book does not. As far as games, Preschool Math at Home is wholly game and play based. There is nothing academic to this curriculum. There are a few this child will learn to use a 10 frame, but even their use of the 10 frame has to do with games. So this is literally counting toys in different arrangements. So she gives you a purpose of why you're doing this activity. She tells you what you need, and then the activity, which is pretty short. And then she even gives you a little note with some extras in there. So Preschool Math at Home is super duper straightforward. Dimensions math. So once again, if you're using just the textbooks and workbooks or one or the other, if you're not using a teacher's guide, this is going to be super straightforward. Also, you open it up to the next page and you do the workbook. But if you're using the teacher's guide, this teacher's guide has a ton of stuff. I want to show you this one. This activity literally made me laugh out loud. All right. So this is in the review section. So you're just reviewing old material because this is at the very end before kindergarten. But part of the extend play is show students how to secure a piece of burlap into an embroidery hoop. Yada, yada, yada. Teach them how to sew. That literally made me laugh, that a preschool math book teaches the child how to sew. But with that said, Dimensions has tons of extras. They have extra books, extra crafts, extra games, more games than you could ever want to do. So I find it's great. So what I like to do is grab these page flags and highlight activities I actually want to cover with my son. And I highlighted a few to show you a few things. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of something in the teacher's guide that is a lot more challenging than what's in the book. So in here, and this is a small image of what is in the student's textbook, and the textbook and workbook are pretty similar in difficulty. But it says, color the correct number of boxes. I did the first one for you. Okay, so my kid knows how to compose a number, and that's all that is. And that is about the same scope of the kind of thing you would see in this book. In Preschool Math at Home is asking kids to compose the number 8, but maybe with stickers or with toys or something else. However, in the Extend and Learn section here, it says, how many shoes? Pose this problem to the student. In my closet, I saw 4 pairs of shoes. How many shoes were in my closet altogether? And it does tell you, allow students to use counters to help them answer, but that's basically multiplication. And this is the first half of preschool. And so they do get pretty challenging questions. Another one. In this one, it says, match the crayons to the number. That is very similar to activities you'll find in mathematical reasoning and pretty straightforward. But in one of these activities, it says, include crayons and bags. Have the students guess how many crayons will fit in a bag. Then fill the bag to prove or disprove their theories. This is estimation, which is really a kind of a challenging thing. But what I find interesting about this book is at the beginning of each chapter, so this was chapter 7, they have a summary and key points. And in the key points, it says estimation will be introduced in this chapter. This skill is important, but is developmentally challenging for young students. According to this study, estimation is a higher order thinking skill. Continue to practice estimation throughout the year. So they remind you, they tell you, they introduce it here so that you can continue with that kind of on your own, because there's not a ton of that in the book, but you do find them. Another type of Singapore-specific problem is here. This is a pretty straightforward picture of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. This is the picture from the very beginning of the book, from chapter 1, but this is chapter 7. They're telling you in the end of pre-KA to go back to lesson 1 and revisit the textbook to go a little bit deeper. So in here, they kind of talk about depth perception, near and far, and talking about students why some things appear small and some things appear large based on their distance from us, which is just a totally different kind of conversation and skill that than any of these other math curriculums are even going into, especially at this level. So anyway, that's a little bit about Dimensions and why I feel like the teacher's guide is such a crucial part of this curriculum. I've gone through, we're in pre-KB right now, and I've gone through and I've pre-flagged some of the stuff that I think I want to do with my kid, and so that's kind of how I use it. I just take a day, a prep time, and I go through and flag the activities that I feel like are going to be appropriate for my son. At least now, I might have to adjust them by the time we get here, depending on when we get to these things. He might already know them, or it might just be brand new. So I kind of flagged everything that I thought would be interesting for him or fun for him, and then I'm going to go with it. So yeah. Okay, as far as prep time, if I arrange these in order of prep time, least prep, you open this book and go, okay, I haven't talked that much about mathematical reasoning. How we would use this book is I started this right at my son's 3rd birthday. And I quickly realized I need to spiral bind it because he just wanted to see what was on every page. But if I put it like this and he only sees one page for whatever reason, it's easier to look at. And so this is touch and say, count. So we literally sit on the couch and just go through a lot of pages at the same time. So this was really nice because it was easy to go at our own pace. But there are some challenges in this that I think are pretty challenging for a 3-year-old. Some that my son just straight up still can't do. These can you find me's. I really had to talk him through how to do this. This is like a strategy thing. And I don't know. My kid doesn't think in strategies right now. So this is something we're going to revisit. So I'm hanging on to this book so we can revisit these kind of puzzles, these verbal puzzles, and see how he does. But this one says, we watched a movie. There were 5 of us, my parents, my sister, and my brother Gus. After the movie, Gus went to bed, but the rest of us stayed up instead. The rest of us are here below. Where are we? Do you know? And so you kind of have to go through and figure out who we are and the configuration of the family. And so that was pretty interesting. This one too. Circle the way you think the cup will land if it dropped to the floor. And this kind of thing too. Sue has more than Tom, but Tom has more than John. Point to each picture below. Tell me the name if you know. So that was pretty challenging for my son. So once my son knew how to subitize, this kind of thing was pretty easy. And he liked this for learning top and bottom. And it spirals. So if you don't get it, it comes back to it and it asks questions. Similar questions, and it'll ask similar questions later. Which jar has more? Which jar has fewer? So he would just point at these. But sometimes he would want to take a marker and circle it, and I just let him do that. But if you're using this for another kid, you don't have to do that. And because we weren't doing that, I put a mark on the page that he did it. So you can talk about who's first and second in this book quite a bit. And that was a challenge for my son when we first reached it, but now he understands this concept. And this one, it talks about patterns, and these patterns did not make sense to my son at first. But I went and took some manipulatives, and I showed him with manipulatives, and he was able to do patterns with manipulatives very easily. But this was confusing because I'd say, what's next? Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And he'd say, green? Because he didn't understand that the helicopter's going to lift the curtain up. This context made no sense to him. And so he's like, an upside down alligator, regular alligator, upside down, regular, upside down, a green curtain? Like this was like beyond his head, beyond him. But if I did it with manipulatives, it would help. But the book doesn't necessarily lead you to manipulatives the majority of the time. So you're going to have to, I guess, think yourself about how important is it that you go grab something to help your kid with the concept out of this, because they don't really give you teaching tips. But my son loved this because we'd sit and cuddle, and he's a cuddler. And so we'd sit and cuddle up on the couch and just do a ton of pages, and he would never want to stop, and I'd be done way before he was done. So we really like this book, and we finished this one. Preschool Math at Home. It's pretty low prep. There's a list of manipulatives in here. Well, here's what you will need. This book, 20 small counters that can fit on the 10 frame, some resources from the appendix printed out onto cardstock, 1 nickel and 10 pennies, blank paper and writing utensil. And then there's some things you'll need occasionally: toys, stuffed animals, blanket, paper bag, dice, tape, game tokens, writing utensils, play food items, optional. It tells you some optional items here: small stickers, index card, food, and some dot stickers as well. And so these are pretty straightforward items, nothing too crazy, but she does give you a complete list. And you do one activity at a time, so it's not like you have to grab 18 different items for one lesson. You grab just a couple materials, none needed. A lot of these are just use your hands. 4 stuffed animals, toy cups, plates, spoons, and play food. I feel like this had the most items needed out of everything else. Over here, nickels and pennies, an optional activity. So 1 nickel, 5 pennies, a variety of small toys. So you can play store, basically. Dimensions, manipulatives. Okay, if you just got linking cubes, you'd be able to do most of this curriculum because there is a textbook, and you could kind of treat it like this. And when your kid doesn't understand something in the textbook, maybe the patterns don't make sense, then you can pull out a manipulative to do a pattern. But there's a lot you can do with other things, but the dimensions will call for, if you just follow the manipulatives at the beginning of a lesson, you're going to have too many things, I think. Because sometimes it'll say, a bag containing this, blank 5-frame card, keyboard, objects of several shades of pink, and finger sandwiches. So you're going to have to read through this and kind of decide what you need. But realistically, you can basically get away with linking cubes for the good majority. At the beginning of this, they talk about textures a little bit. Rough, bumpy, smooth, soft, hard, and they do talk about grainy, like things with flour and sugar and salt and pepper versus glue, and things that are sticky like tape and glue. And I had my kid literally digging in bowls of flour for this activity. So this activity was super hands-on and super getting to know how to describe things and use this comparative language in everyday life, which I really, really loved. So yeah, you're gonna have to use a lot of discretion in dimensions math in choosing your manipulatives, whether you want to go no manipulatives or minimum, or you want to go all out and do all. So yeah, that's kind of how these work. None of these books have number writing in them. So if your kid is like mine and wants to write a lot of numbers, I got the handwriting without tears. We're using handwriting without tears for handwriting. And I got these little books for practicing handwriting for numbers. And this is the 3 book. And the 3 book does a review of the other numbers. And then it just does 3. And it just has 3 with some little stories, poems, little activities that you can kind of do. Like you can copy these and play games with these 3 cups and whatever, and some songs. And my kid really likes these. We have them all through 10, and he's almost finished with these. I probably pull them out like twice a month, a new book, but he'll do them in one day now at this point. And so he does number writing with something like this, which is perfect for where he's at. Other things that these cover is, these all cover basic addition problems, like give and take away. Like this one will say, use your fingers on one hand to show the total of both groups. So it'll have 2 plus 3, how many rats? 5. And my son wrote these out because he likes to write numbers, so I let him write on the page. This one talks about math, or talks about addition and subtraction very briefly in the last chapter, addition and subtraction stories. Chapter 7 focuses on understanding the concepts of addition and subtraction. You'll use simple stories, concrete objects, and pictures to introduce addition as joining 2 sets together, and subtraction as taking away part of a set. I'm assuming they teach subtraction in the next level. What I showed you was addition, but this is level 1. So check it out yourself, look through flip throughs and see. And in dimensions, they also have, at the very end of pre-KB, they also have beginning addition and subtraction, but they actually use the symbols. If you notice, Kate Snow uses stories. They use stories and symbols. And here it says, tell a takeaway story for 3 minus 1. And so it goes into that. In conclusion, I think these 2 curriculums actually pair together really well. Especially if you're a little ahead in this one. Then doing this one will introduce things like patterning and some other stuff, and they both take almost no time. This one, if you just do 1 page or 2 pages a day, it's super short. If this one, you do 1 lesson a day, there's about 60 activities. So you could do 2 of these a week and make it through a whole year. And these activities are super straightforward, and you can just play them over and over, and they're super quick. Like peekaboo fingers with 2 hands. This is the instructions for the activity. It's very short. So the activities here are less than, take Each activity in this book takes less than 5 minutes. A lot of times maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute or maybe 45 seconds to actually do an activity. And if your kid doesn't get it, you just try it again. Maybe you just talk to them. So what this book doesn't do is give you a ton of like teaching tips to work on it. And this book's kind of mastery based. And if your kid doesn't get it, just wait. So you might find yourself stuck at a point and just waiting for a while with this one. And so if you're trying to build habits, this curriculum is not going to help you do that, but it is going to pull out the meat of everything that is going to be helpful for your kid. Dimensions is going to go next level into the things it's teaching your preschooler. I know Dimensions is popular with word problems in the later grades and Singapore math in general, but these are next level problems, I think, for a preschooler. The mathematical reasoning book has problems that are difficult for a preschooler, but it doesn't guide them how to get there. It just kind of presents the problems. So this is good at kind of identifying what your kid knows and doesn't know using this book, because it's pretty obvious when your kid has no clue and gives you the deer in the headlight look. Whereas you have more approaches, I feel like, in other books, because this is telling you what and why. This is telling you things that are maybe developmentally appropriate or not, or this might warn you that you might reach a challenge, where this is just going to give you the next thing in the book that might be 20 times harder than the thing on the page before. But like I said, the teacher's guide is a lot more challenging than the textbook and workbook. My kid gets the textbook and workbook and just thinks it's a coloring page and just bulldozes through it. But I still like to go through and teach some of these activities that I have flagged even afterwards, or go through and review, or go through and take it to the next level, because they have kind of level things. So you can go through this curriculum on, I guess, like easy mode, or you can go through it on hard mode. And my kid can't go through it on hard mode, but easy mode is actually easy for him. And so if you do some of those extra challenges, they'll take extra time, at least for my son. That's what I've noticed. So, and we finished this one a long time ago, and we really like it. But I won't be buying the second one because that would be too much stuff, because we're doing a lot of other stuff anyway. So many people will skip preschool math altogether in lieu of kindergarten math. And what I've also seen is a lot of people will also skip kindergarten math and go straight to first grade. And so I am bringing these out as preschool curriculum because many families who use these two curriculum start their kid off in the first grade level. So in Rightstart, that would be level B, and in Saxon, that would be level 1. So they might just start their kid off in the first grade level and work through it slowly, or they just might use the level 1 for kindergarten because of the way these curriculums are taught, or the scope and sequence of it. So you'll see that quite a bit. So because of that, sometimes those families will use this K level as a pre-K if they use it at all. Another one that I don't actually have my hands on that people use for in a similar way is Math UC Primer. Super popular homeschool math curriculum. And another thing is DIY math, or Montessori Math also. So Rightstart Math, Saxon Math, Math UC, and any DIY curriculums or Montessori curriculums are all other good options for preschool math. So should you teach preschool math? Let's see what the curriculum writers have to say. In mathematical reasoning, they say keep learning fun and avoid frustrating your child. And preschool math at home, Kate Snow says, if there's frustration or tears, stop. Math time for preschoolers should be fun. And most of all, enjoy this time with your preschooler. In Dimensions Pre-K, they say the overarching objective of pre-K math is to provide exposure to numeracy concepts through play so that students' first experiences with mathematics are joyful. Basically, all of the curriculum are saying that this should be fun. So if it's not fun, then stop. Childhood is way too short to be stressed about preschool math. So which of these should you choose? Any of them, as long as they look fun. So that's basically all I have to say, but now I'd like to hear from you. Which of these look fun? Do any of them look fun? Do none of them look fun? Do you plan on teaching math to your preschooler, or is that something that you like to just forego entirely and just wait until kinder? Is there anybody out there who actually waits to do till first grade to do formal mathematics? I know that's pretty popular among the Charlotte Mason method. So let me know. Drop a comment below, and thank you for watching.